like to invite up to the stage now a woman that we love to have at these forums. She's so popular, enjoyed by absolutely everyone every year, and we've found Kathleen Noonan her own permanent spot in the And Another Thing segment. So please sit back and enjoy Kathleen's entertaining words of wisdom. Kathleen Noonan.
Okay, my microphone going to be high enough tonight. I've come tonight from the domestic violence candle lighting vigil down at South Bank. Just came straight from there, and it was really very sobering. It's a sea of candles on the banks of the Brisbane River. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on, but I was just so glad that I could get across and be here in time to hear the other speakers, because they were just extraordinary, weren't they? I just thought it was such an amazing show. We're such storytelling creatures, and I think, it helps us make sense of our world. And also, when I hear other women's stories, it really makes me want to be a better person. What I need to do tonight before I do anything else is actually say congratulations to Carol, because that's really... It takes an enormous effort to make events happen. They sound like a really good idea at the time, and you say, yeah, that sounds really good, but they're actually a load of hard work. And for Carol and her team, you're a good woman. You're mad, but you're a good woman. Now tonight, I just really wanted to pick apart that idea of good women, and talk a little bit about a woman you might know or not know much about. I wanted to tell you a little bit about Anne Summers. Now, Anne Summers is now a social commentator and a writer and an activist. She's been an activist all her life. But this is a story about the first women's shelter in Australia. So it was 1974, and there was nowhere for abused women to go. They were called battered women in those days. And the police didn't want to know about it. And the church used to tell them to go home and obey their husband. And other people really didn't want to talk about that in civil company, polite company. And so the then feminist Anne Summers had heard that there was a Church of England was planning to sell off the whole heap of its houses in Glebe and to the government for public housing. And she was young at the time, and she'd done lots of squatting in her time, and so she knew that you had squatters' rights if you could take over a house, and she knew that was prevailing. And so she found an unoccupied cottage in pretty good condition, and the house was named Elsie, just happened to have that name on the outside of it. And a few days later, Anne Summers and 14 other women, armed with shovels and broomsticks, broke into the house, and they changed the locks, and they called the media. And it must have been a very young John Laws decided he would interview Summers, and he announced the phone number on radio. This is where women can go. And women turned up. They were coming down the street. There were so many of them, so grateful, because there was nowhere else to go anywhere. This was the first shelter that had been built. And so then, for some reason, Oakley, I can only imagine Oakley in the 1970s, just blown away by these sort of conservative men, they decided to oblige by securing the back fence and by supplying playground equipment. And then the local shopkeepers decided they would donate local produce that was left over. And when Anne Summers was interviewed about starting the first women's shelter in Australia, she was asked, how did you fund it in those early years? And she said, I dealt marijuana for that year. And that's how we got the cash. And, what I love most about that story is that, apart from the unorthodox funding model, it's got John Laws in it, and it's got Rotarians in it, and I just think it's brilliant. In life, you actually sometimes have to have the most unlikely partners to get the best out of something or to get ahead. So was Anne Summers a good woman? But certainly not by the standards of the day, no way. But the problem wasn't the women. The problem was actually the standards of the day. So, you know, I think, what are our standards today? You have to have a Kardashian ass today. You have to have a selfie pout, and you have to have $1 million house. And other standards of today that you have to have, a $1,200 formal dress that I heard a woman talking about last night. You know, are they our standards of today? I guess not in my world. I guess I want to choose my standards. So you have to be a good woman, I guess, for yourself. You have to make up your own rules. I believe in not seeing my worth through my children's successes and failures. I think that's a real fool's game. Particularly for women, we really suffers for that, I think. We're so much more than that. And it's a game that you just won't win at. And yet I find that when we're not properly intellectually stimulated, I think we do get up to no good. I think we shop too much, and we drink too much, and we eat too much, and we gossip too much, and we spend too much, and we fool around too much. And I think knowing your self-worth and ensuring that you're intellectually stimulated actually is at the centre of being a good woman. For ourselves, a good woman for ourselves. So to keep me off the streets and to stop me doing any number of those things, when I'm not writing, I work pro bono for a committee called Second Chance, and it fundraises for homeless women and domestic violence shelters. And it's meant that I've had the great pleasure to see up close the work of the founder of our group, activist Dale Spender, and also people like Megan Bryce. And I think she's really interesting. You know, at a stage in her life where she could just be deciding to live a quiet life and just simply spend time with her grandchildren, she took on the Domestic Violence Task Force, which was a huge and very important job. She produced 140 recommendations of how Queensland can address its domestic violence problem. And the statistics are a source of profound shame for our nation. Every week it's now two women who got violence. That's 30 this year. If it was 30 young surfers chomped by sharks, we would have emptied the oceans by now. And I heard her say the other night that she was really worried that domestic violence and the momentum which is around at the moment is going to somehow not be caught by the leadership and not be caught. It's going to go off the boil. The media attention is going to go somewhere else. And that opportunity for momentum and cultural change is going to be lost. So I thought everywhere I speak this year, I'm going to make sure I throw in a bit about domestic violence. And, you know, that's a cheerleader subject. So, you know, when the Rotarians or the Probus or the men's at the men's sheds say, come and talk to us about journalism, I say, yeah, sure, no problem. And then I hit them with a bit about domestic violence. You know, they get a bit more than they bargained for. And I try to sort of soften it up or even it up for them, and I tell them a joke. And so, you know, I'll say, this guy's gone to the doctor and he says, doctor, I've got 5 penises. And the doctor says, how do your pants fit? And he says, like a glove. And, you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it really doesn't work. I actually told that joke, and I don't know what I was thinking this day, but I had been I get asked by a lot of girls' schools to go and talk. It was a Catholic girls' school up there on one of the beautiful hills, and so I was supposed to be talking to you about poetry or literature or something, but I decided to liven it up, and I told them that joke, and then, you know, the teachers were looking like, what? Anyway, I left the school, I was driving down the mountain, and I get a phone call from a man I know. He's a judge, and his girl goes to the school, and he says, Kathy said, my daughter wasn't even in that class, and within about 10 minutes of you telling that joke, the whole school knew the penis joke. So, yeah, sometimes, they invite you back sometimes, but so I decided that whenever I get asked to speak, even if it's in particular to girls' schools, about poetry or literature, I also talk about, domestic violence awareness, because I think it hasn't been talked about openly, and it's been hidden for too long. So there are domestic violence shelters hidden all over Brisbane, in the suburbs, There's one not far from here, and it's actually a fantastic shelter. I've visited many of them, interviewed the women and the workers who were there, sat and had a cup of tea, and this is not something that goes on in the rougher suburbs, okay, only. It goes on in Bulimba, Coorparoo, Hawthorne. There are women here tonight who know domestic violence. There are women who have grown up with domestic violence in their childhood. The stats tell us this, okay? There are women here right now who either with a past partner or with a present partner or with a future partner will know domestic violence. They'll know the dread of it, and they'll know how about the fear you have for your safety. And can I say to you, you are not alone, okay? You're sitting there feeling ashamed, and I've noticed something. In the tougher suburbs, the domestic violence is it's loud, and it gets, people ring the police, and the whole suburb sort of knows about it. And then in the wealthier suburbs, it's behind closed doors, and it's all very hushed up. And I was speaking to a woman at Ashcott, and she said, "Yeah, I heard the most terrible fight and violence from my neighbours," and she said, "I didn't want to embarrass them by making their critics." And so, shame is a really big part of it. People don't want to tell their family or friends. They don't want to admit it because of the shame. And I really want to say that it's actually women are ashamed because they think it's their fault. And let me say very, very clearly, it is not your fault. It is never your fault. It is never the victim's fault. This has been treated as a women's problem for too long. It's actually a men's issue. There is something profoundly wrong with some sectors of the male culture in this country. And good, decent men are a huge part of the solution. A footy coach mate of mine rang me the other day and said, "What can I do? How can I talk to these 19-year-old boys that I coach? Can we fundraise for a women's shelter?" And I said, "LA." So if you're in a management or in workforce or you're in sort of a position at work, can you ask the question tomorrow of your company of what are we doing about domestic violence? And what are we doing about supporting our employees, whether they be male or female, and have experienced violence? What are we doing to fundraise, to help shelters? Because if there's not a grassroots opportunity, a community change of culture, then nothing's going to change. So the Quentin Brosses of the world can hand down their 140 recommendations, and it's a profound and important report. I've read it. But nothing will actually change until we have a will to act and until we have really strong leadership on this from Canberra. If you've got a husband or a brother who's in a senior position at their firm, can you say to him, "Hey, what are you guys doing about their thing?" Okay? Because good, decent men have to step up. Because this is affecting millions of women and children. Women are not some special interest group. We're not some minority group. And what motivates me is how certain are you that your daughters are not going to experience domestic violence if the culture doesn't change. There's a book which is about do-it-yourself activism and social change, and I love the title. It's called Beautiful Trouble. And I reckon where it is needed, good women make beautiful trouble. And good women don't really care about the standards of the day. And good women look out for other women. Thank you very much.